Yes, so we will discuss Industrial Metaverse. I'll explain a bit what it is, but also why blockchain is a key enabler to actually make it happen. If you search for Metaverse, you will quickly end up in a kind of purple environment with a lot of beautiful sunsets. If you add industrial to that metaverse, it gets much more gray and black and blue. And that's the kind of world that I'm working in. And it was exactly a year ago on the day today that our CEO, Roland Busch, went on stage with Jensen Huang from NVIDIA to announce the enablement of the industrial metaverse. And over the past years, we've started to shape that much more and to try to understand why an industrial metaverse can make such a big impact as we give it as a purpose. So the reason is why it matters is that we will be able to solve problems more efficiently, and not only in terms of cost, which is of course important, but also in terms of impact and having an insight on the future result of the decisions that we take today. Let me try to explain what it is or how we define the industrial metaverse, because a very important element of the industrial metaverse is that it's not something that we need to wait for. It is an evolution of stuff that exists today. It's much more an integrating effort than a revolution of new technology. It is a place to experience and to interact with digital twins. And the key difference with the digital twin as we know it today is that we add to that higher levels of immersion, creating 3D environments where you can see, experience, touch that digital model. We add to that interaction. We take in real-world data into that model continuously. We bring in simulation results, particularly real-time fast simulation results, giving you an insight into the impact of changes that you make to that product. We add collaboration to it, so you're able to invite other people, be in the same environment, discuss with other disciplines, bring in non-expert people into the decision-making process. And lastly, it is a persistent world, so it's the single source of truth. As soon as the real-world data changes, the model in the industrial metaverse changes along the changes in the real world, such that you always have access to the latest and greatest. This is then built on digital twin data exchange, and that has been referred before. And that's important as it implies that you get dependent on other people's data, so you need to trust that data. And secondly, you want to make data available and also monetize the work that you did. So it's the 4 pillars on top of a digital twin, allowing us to look into new business models through digital data exchange. The 2 examples that you see there are, on one hand, the Siemens example, where we built the high-speed train network of Egypt, starting from a digital first before building the actual rail network and train deployment. And on the right side, you see Freyr, a customer that builds gigafactories for battery production. So also there, the starting point is a digital factory before you actually build the real one. And if you have built the real system and the real factory, you can still leverage the model that you've used in the design stage. And that's maybe a key element in the transition from a digital twin to an industrial metaverse. We want to take away the boundaries, the individual steps from silo to silo throughout the product life cycle. So models I create during a design stage, in a concept design, I want to use in my engineering stage, I want to use for virtual testing and verification. But then I also want to use the model of that product to design my manufacturing line, to design my production machinery, to do a virtual commissioning, to train my operators in a virtual environment and give them augmented reality on-the-job work instructions during the actual operations. And as soon as that product is in deployment and being used, there is data coming out of that machine, and we add that to that digital twin. All these individual steps exist, but in the industrial metaverse, we want to take away the boundaries between these different stages. And the same applies for the vertical axis here, and that's the supply chain. So we want to ensure that a supplier of a system integrator, of an OEM, of a deployment into an environment can exchange data and can ensure that there is always access to the latest model that they produce. We start from virtual data, as there is no product yet. As soon as we build controllers or electronics that need to be tested, we can combine that into the virtual world. And as soon as the product is produced, we start to add real-world data and operational data into that model that lives in the industrial metaverse. So the industrial metaverse is an arrow, and it's this arrow, and that represents then a seamless transition throughout the entire life cycle and throughout the entire supply chain of a product. The ingredients to build the industrial metaverse are listed here. So I already mentioned digital twins, but there is many more technologies that for a company like Siemens are really important, like the Internet of Things, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, like the edge compute on one end, the cloud compute on the other end, the networks that are in between, virtual reality, augmented reality, and then blockchain. And as that's the topic of today, I'll zoom in on two projects or two products of Siemens that exist today that will underpin the transition into an industrial metaverse. Starting with what we call trusted traceability. If you 50 years ago would look for milk, you would buy a glass bottle of milk and pay for that. If you now go to a shop and look for milk, you can choose from maybe 30 different types of milk, right? If it's low-fat or high-fat milk, and if it's cow milk or goat milk, or if it's soy milk or almond milk, there is and milk with all kinds of tastes. So where the milkman 50 years ago knew which farmer he could go to buy his milk, there is now an entire global supply chain behind the products that we buy. A lot of steps in between and a lot of suppliers to take care of if you are the end seller of that product. And these are quotes from larger research organizations. A typical, and I assume like a car maker, a technology company, has roughly 125 tier 1 suppliers, and behind these 125 there is another 7,000 of lower level suppliers that all together create a vehicle. It's an illusion to think that you are in control of all these 7,000 suppliers underneath, and while you are still responsible for that end product. And while costs of failing parts are massive, right? If you think about the cost of recalls, that's huge amounts of money and also a huge damage to the image of the company. So what we offer already for 3 to 4 years now, I think, is a product called Trusted Traceability, where we help these customers to build a traceability line down into the entire supply chain, and helping them to be able to answer questions from customers or to find out where parts are produced, and also be able to trace back how much vehicles, for example, should be involved in such a recall activity. So that helps in doing your business right, but maybe even more important is looking at the impact of climate change. And this is another huge driver for our company today. And we are part of the Estanium Association, which is a network of a bit more than 20 companies, universities, but also TÜV Süd, for example, that have acknowledged that industry has a major impact on climate change, and that it is up to industry to also help solving the issues that we face today. And now that's an important step. Obviously, there's also business reasons behind such a step. People expect from more companies to be transparent in, for example, the product carbon footprint. So the product that we developed is called Sea Green, and it helps companies to get very crisp and traceable information about the global footprint, the carbon footprint of their products. So pretty similar to the line up of the Trusted Traceability product. What we work on is transparency, ensuring that you can explain your customers, that you understand where your products come from and how you are in control of your supply chain, but also for tax reasons, for example. There is more and more tax being built on top of CO2 numbers, so having a clear picture of that is pretty critical. We built that on ID Union, and the key in the end is in the transparency and traceability topic. Now, so it's kind of two stories, two existing products and the immersion of the industrial metaverse. So the industrial metaverse is a place where we experience and interact with digital twins. We add immersion to that. We add more collaboration, more interaction, and more persistence to the digital twins as we know it. And by doing so, we can create an open platform, an open ecosystem where we deliver services, where we deliver products as a service that are interoperable, that can work with other products like the SAP products. And then we have the opportunity to create this continuity throughout the supply chain. But to generate that continuity throughout the supply chain, the key enabler is trust. And trust we can only bring with transparency and with traceability. So that's the, how the loop closes and how it's also easy, I think, to understand that there will be no industrial metaverse without blockchain. And with that, I'd like to thank you. And I also like to introduce already shortly my colleague Saurabh Singh, who will be in the panel afterwards and who is also available for further questions. And I'm also available for further questions. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So we're really good in time. So do we have any questions, or are you ready to take any questions? Okay, perfect. Let me quickly give you the mic.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I would be interested regarding the use cases where you really see the immersive experience on, for example, tracing the supply chain. So, because that's always the discussion that I experienced. Is it already the industrial metaverse if you have a supply chain digital twin where you can trace your products or carbon footprint? Or is there another layer that is needed? So that's really then the industrial metaverse. So just maybe your opinion on that one.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm much more on your second part of the answer. I think for me, the industrial metaverse experience will be in a 3D environment with, for example, a product being produced on a manufacturing line, and me being able to invite the safety guy because I want to change something to that manufacturing line. However, I can only build that model of both the product and the manufacturing line if I have the right digital twin of the product and the machine that I have there. And in order to get to that model, I need a supply chain traceability and a network that ensures that that is the right model. So I'd say it's much more an enabler than that the two examples are industrial metaverse examples. I think it's a building block, and I listed a couple of more building blocks. I think it is in the consolidation of these individual building blocks that we will create the industrial metaverse. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Perfect. Maybe one last question. Okay, perfect. Go ahead.
Hello. Is the supply chain traceability solution closed or permission network, or is it set up where it's very open and different companies can very easily join?
My understanding is that it's on a closed network, but I would definitely suggest to talk to Saurabh if you want to go deeper into the details. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Then in this case, I think we should start with the panel. Okay, perfect. Another applause.